You know that highly specific feeling of looking at your pay stub and your eyes just go straight to that gross number at the top. I mean, the amount you technically earn.
Oh, yeah. The theoretical number.
Right. And it looks great.
Yeah.
But then, your eyes travel down to the net number at the bottom. And sometimes when you look at the chasm between those two numbers and then you check the actual balance in your checking account, it doesn't feel like math anymore.
It really doesn't. It feels like a magic trick.
Yes, exactly. An illusion where your money simply vanishes into thin air before you even had a chance to decide what to do with it.
It really is the ultimate disappearing act. I mean, we trade so much of our time and mental energy to earn that capital, right? But the actual mechanics of capturing it, keeping it, and making it multiply usually feel locked behind this incredibly dense curtain of financial jargon.
Completely.
And so most people just accept the vanishing act as this permanent condition of modern adulthood.
Which is completely understandable, but totally avoidable. And that is exactly our mission for this deep dive. We are tearing down that curtain for you today.
We really are.
Yeah, we've synthesized a massive stack of research, everything from banking analyses and behavioral studies on salaried employees to tactical retirement guides and wealth management blueprints. But to be clear, we aren't just going to read you a textbook.
Nobody wants that.
Definitely not. We're translating all of this into a practical step-by-step system to build wealth. We want to give you the shortcut to being intensely well-informed about your own money without, that overwhelming information overload.
And I think the foundational concept to grasp right out of the gate is that you do not need an advanced economics degree to construct a bulletproof financial life.
Right.
What you do need is an understanding of the underlying mechanics, the why and the how behind where your money goes. Because once you understand the physical architecture of these accounts and strategies, the anxiety, it just starts to evaporate.
It turns from a chore into a system that just actively works for you in the background.
Exactly.
So let's get into that architecture. Because before we can talk about compound interest or stock market returns, we really have to start at ground zero, which is controlling the daily cash flow.
Yeah, the day-to-day.
Right, because if we can't figure out a way to physically trap that extra money before it vanishes, nothing else we discuss today is going to matter.
You need a containment framework.
Yeah.
And the most universally recommended starting point across almost all the banking literature we looked at is the 50-30-20 rule.
Okay, let's unpack this.
So the mechanics are pretty simple. You take your after-tax income,
That painful net number at the bottom of the pay stub.
that exact one, and you funnel it into 3 rigid buckets. So 50% is allocated to your absolute survival needs, right? Housing, basic utilities, and groceries.
Okay.
Then 30% is allocated to your wants, the streaming services, dining out, travel. And that final 20% is non-negotiable. It is deployed strictly for debt repayment and wealth-building savings.
Wait, let me push back on that for a second, because that math just feels entirely disconnected from reality right now.
It does feel tight.
Is limiting needs to 50% actually possible for someone living in a major city today? You look at rents in places like Austin or San Diego or New York. The housing alone can easily consume 50% of a paycheck, and that's before you even, buy a carton of eggs.
Well, your skepticism is entirely justified. And honestly, the banking data actually backs you up on this.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because of the macroeconomic realities we're facing in 2026, where inflation has permanently elevated the baseline cost of mere existence, financial institutions are openly acknowledging that the classic rule is breaking down.
That makes so much sense.
Right, and that's why we are seeing a shift toward an alternative framework, which is the 7-to-20-10 ratio.
Okay, how does that one work?
So this adjusts to the modern tragedy of inflation by allowing up to 70% of income to cover those ballooning essential needs. It still protects that critical 20% for future savings, but it ruthlessly compresses your wants category down to just 10%.
Wow, only 10% for wants.
Yeah, it's a much tighter lifestyle, but it reflects the mathematical reality of current pricing.
Which is, it's a tough pill to swallow, but highly necessary to acknowledge. But what about people who just fundamentally do not operate well with percentages? Their brain just rejects it.
There are structural alternatives, for sure. One is zero-based budgeting.
Right.
Where instead of looking at categories, you look at dollars as employees. Every single dollar is assigned a specific job description, whether that job is pay the electric bill or sit in the vacation fund before the month even begins.
So your balance hits zero on paper because every dollar has a mandate.
Exactly. But I know there's another method you wanted to touch on.
Yes. The method I find absolutely fascinating is kakeibo.
Oh, the traditional Japanese household financial ledger. It really is a brilliant psychological tool.
It really is, because it attacks the problem physically. You don't use an app. You use a physical pen and a notebook.
The old school way.
Yeah, and you write down your expenses into 4 specific categories. Survival, optional cultural items like books or museum visits, and then unexpected costs. And by forcing yourself to write it down, you are creating intense psychological friction.
Which is key.
Right, you're intentionally slowing down the dopamine hit of swiping a credit card. It's less about mathematical restriction and more about just forced mindfulness.
That friction is the entire point. I mean, modern consumerism is designed to be frictionless.
Absolutely.
Apple Pay, one-click ordering. They are literally engineered to separate the emotion of spending from the math of spending.
So true.
And Kakaibo forces a reunion between the two.
Mm-hmm.
And you really need that friction regardless of the budgeting method you choose, because you are constantly fighting a microscopic daily battle against a phenomenon known as lifestyle creep.
Ugh, lifestyle creep. I always picture it like a gas that naturally expands to fill whatever size container you put it in.
That's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, like no matter how massive your paycheck gets, your spending magically expands to fill the space, leaving you with exactly 0 extra dollars.
Always 0.
You get a promotion, and suddenly drip coffee turns into artisanal lattes. The, perfectly fine sedan gets traded in for a luxury lease. Yesterday's wild splurge quietly becomes today's baseline necessity.
And the insidious nature of lifestyle creep is that it happens incrementally, so you rarely feel the danger. But mathematically, the opportunity cost is staggering.
How so?
Well, wealth managers point out that every single dollar lost to a subtle lifestyle upgrade today is a dollar that loses its ability to compound over the next 30 years.
Ouch.
Yeah. And the most effective mechanism to defeat it isn't willpower, it's automation. The moment a raise hits your account, you set up an automatic transfer that funnels the difference directly into an investment account.
So you artificially restrict the container size so the gas can't expand. Okay, so we've introduced the friction. We've trapped the extra money before it expands. Where do we put it? Because before we can talk about generating massive wealth, the research is adamant that you have to construct a defensive perimeter around your life.
A financial moat. And honestly, this is where the statistics get alarming. Recent banking surveys show that only 44% of Americans can cover a sudden $1,000 emergency from their cash reserves.
Less than half the country. I mean, one blown transmission, one ER visit, and they are mathematically underwater.
Which is why establishing an emergency fund is the absolute first priority.
Yeah.
The benchmark is accumulating 3 to 6 months of vital living expenses.
Right.
But the architecture of where you store this money is crucial. It must be highly liquid, meaning you can access it quickly, but it shouldn't just sit in a regular checking account earning 0 interest.
So what's the alternative?
You utilize a high-yield savings account or a money market account.
Okay, let's break that down because I think people hear money market and instantly assume it's tied to the stock market. How do those accounts actually generate higher yields?
It's essentially interest rate arbitrage. The bank takes your deposit and lends it out overnight to other institutions at a higher rate.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and because these specific accounts often have rules, like requiring a higher minimum balance or limiting you to 6 withdrawals a month, the bank is willing to share a meaningful cut of that profit with you in the form of a 4% or 5% yield.
That makes sense.
So your money is safe, it's growing slightly above inflation, and it takes about 24 to 48 hours to transfer it to your checking account when an emergency strikes.
Which I feel like that slight delay is actually a feature, not a bug, right?
Silly.
It prevents you from impulsively swiping a debit card for a pair of shoes.
Exactly. And critically, you never ever put this emergency cash in the stock market.
Yeah.
You do not want your safety net shrinking by 20% on the exact same day the economy crashes and you lose your job.
Yeah, the moat is useless if the water evaporates when you need it most. But while we're digging this moat, we have to address the flaming arrows flying over the castle walls, which is debt. When you have extra cash, how do you deploy it against what you owe? We looked at 2 opposing strategies in the research, the snowball method and the avalanche method.
This is a classic battle between human psychology and pure mathematics.
How so?
Well, the snowball method focuses on behavior. You list all your debts from the smallest balance to the largest, completely ignoring the interest rates. You aggressively pay off that tiny $500 medical bill first.
Okay.
And that creates a massive dopamine rush. It's a psychological win that motivates you to attack the next debt.
That makes sense.
The avalanche method, however, focuses purely on the math. You attack the debt with the highest interest rate first, which is usually like a 24% credit card.
Right.
Mathematically, the avalanche method saves you the most money and gets you out of debt faster. But psychologically, throwing payments at a massive $15,000 credit card balance can feel like throwing pebbles at a mountain.
Yeah, that sounds incredibly discouraging. But wait, let's talk about the math for a second, especially when we look at different types of debt. Let's say I have a student loan sitting at a 5% interest rate. But I also know the historical average return of the stock market is roughly 7% to 10% after inflation. Shouldn't I just pay the absolute bare minimum on my cheap student loans and invest every spare dollar into the market? Like, why would I rush to pay off a cheap loan?
From a purely quantitative wealth building perspective, you are absolutely correct.
Really?
Yes, it's an arbitrage strategy. If you invest that extra dollar, it is effectively earning a 2% to 5% higher return than what you are losing to the loan's interest rate. Your money works harder for you in the market than it does destroying that low interest debt.
Okay, so that's what they mean by good bet.
Exactly. Wealth advisors typically categorize things like low interest mortgages or student loans as good debt because they are leveraged investments in your future earning potential.
Right.
Now, some people crave the psychological piece of being 100% debt-free, which is a totally valid lifestyle choice.
Yeah.
But mathematically, leveraging low-interest debt to capture higher market returns is how large-scale wealth is optimized.
And this is the perfect pivot. We've automated the budget, we've built the cash moat, we understand how to optimize our debt. Now we shift from defense to offense.
Let's do it.
How do we start aggressively building that wealth using the architecture our employers provide?
The primary engine for the average salaried professional is the workplace retirement account, which is usually a 401k. Yet, retirement plan administrators report that roughly 25% of employees are making a catastrophic, unforced error.
Which is?
They are not contributing enough of their own paycheck to capture the full employer match.
A quarter of the workforce is just walking past free money. Here's where it gets really interesting, because I always try to visualize the employer match like this.
Okay.
Imagine your boss is standing in the hallway next to a lockbox. They look at you and say, hey, if you put $100 of your own paycheck into this box, I will literally reach into my own wallet and drop another $100 in right next to it.
A pretty good deal.
If that happened in real life, you would sprint to the ATM. But because it's buried in an HR portal, people just ignore it. I mean, if it's literally free money, why are a quarter of people ignoring it? Is it because vesting schedules make it feel like a trap?
That is exactly what it is. I
Yeah.
mean, it's a guaranteed 50% to 100% immediate return on your investment, which is impossible to find anywhere else in the financial world. But the hesitation usually comes from a misunderstanding of a mechanism called vesting.
The strings attached to the free money. Let's explain the mechanics of a vesting schedule, because it really does feel like a trap to a lot of people.
A vesting schedule dictates how much of that employer-provided money actually legally belongs to you based on your tenure.
Okay.
Imagine your employer puts $5,000 of matching funds into your account. You can see it on your statement, and it's growing in the market. But the key to fully owning that specific $5,000 is on, say, a 5-year timer. If your company has a tiered vesting schedule and you quit after 2 years, they will literally reach into your account, claw back 60% of their contributions, and let you keep the remaining 40%.
Wow.
It is a mechanism designed purely for employee retention. However, the vital takeaway is this. Even if you know you're going to leave the company in 2 years, you still capture the match.
Because keeping 40% of free money is infinitely better than having 0% of free money.
Exactly. Don't leave money on the table.
And the limits on what you can put in are substantial. For 2026, the IRS lets you funnel up to $23,500 of your own money into a 401k, plus an extra $7,500 if you're over 50.
Right.
But then you hit the next major fork in the road inside that HR portal, which is choosing between a traditional 401k and a Roth 401k.
This choice is entirely about tax timing. It's a bet on what tax bracket you think you'll be in decades from now. Well, a traditional 401k uses pre-tax dollars. The money goes in before the government taxes your paycheck, which artificially lowers your taxable income today.
Nice.
But the IRS always gets their cut. You will pay ordinary income taxes on every dollar you withdraw, including the growth when you retire.
Okay. And the Roth.
A Roth 401k flips the timeline. You pay the taxes upfront on the money today, but in exchange for that immediate pain, the money grows tax-free, and when you withdraw it in retirement, the IRS cannot touch a single cent of it.
So a 401k is a fantastic vehicle for building the capital you need to cover your living expenses in retirement. But it has a massive, terrifying blind spot. It gets absolutely eaten alive by medical bills.
Oh, without a doubt.
Which brings us to a parallel account that most people completely misunderstand. Let's talk about the ultimate healthcare hacker tool, the HSA.
Yes. To understand the HSA, we briefly need to look at the health insurance choices that gatekeep it. During open enrollment, most people choose a PPO, a preferred provider organization. PPOs charge you a high premium every single paycheck, but when you go to the doctor, your out-of-pocket costs are quite low and predictable.
You pay a premium for the peace of mind that a random surgery won't bankrupt you that month.
Exactly the trade-off. The alternative is the high deductible health plan, or HDHP.
Right.
By law, in 2026, an individual on this plan must pay the first $1,700 of their medical bills entirely out of pocket before the insurance provides meaningful coverage.
Ouch.
For a family, it's $3,400. That risk scares people away. But accepting that higher deductible is the only way to legally unlock access to a health savings account, or HSA.
And this is where we need to reframe things for everyone listening. People treat an HSA like it's just a temporary medical debit card used to buy bandages with pre-tax dollars.
Right.
So an HSA isn't just a medical debit card. It's basically a secret, superpowered retirement account in disguise.
Yeah.
I mean, it is arguably a more powerful retirement account than the 401k itself.
It really is. The financial analysts call it the triple tax advantage, and it is a unicorn in the tax code.
Break that down for us.
Step 1. The money goes in completely tax-free, lowering your taxable income for the year.
Love that.
Step 2. The money inside the HSA can actually be invested in the stock market exactly like a 401k,
Yep.
and all that growth is entirely tax-free.
Which is huge.
And step 3. When you withdraw the money to pay for a qualified medical expense, the withdrawal is tax-free. Pre-tax in, tax-free growth, tax-free out.
And here's the mechanism that makes it a wealth-building juggernaut. Unlike a flexible spending account, an FSA, where the money expires at the end of the year, HSA funds roll over forever.
Forever.
So if you are generally healthy today, the optimal strategy is to max out the HSA, which in 2026 is $4,400 for a single person or $8,750 for a family. Invest it in the market and then just pay your minor medical bills out of your regular checking account. You let that HSA money compound undisturbed for 30 years. By the time you hit your 70s and face massive healthcare costs, you have a 6-figure, totally tax-free war chest waiting for you.
It is a profound strategic advantage that fundamentally alters how you survive the most expensive phase of human life.
All right, we've built the vehicles, we've got the automated budget, the liquid moat, the optimized 401k, and the stealth tax haven of the HSA. But having the best cars in the world doesn't matter if the driver is prone to panic.
That's the truth.
Let's zoom out and look at the psychology of investing over a lifetime, because our own brains are often our biggest financial liability.
The behavioral research on this is fascinating. A recent study analyzing salaried professionals isolated a massive recurring flaw in how we operate.
What's the flaw?
End-of-year tax panic.
Oh boy.
People tend to ignore their finances for 11 months, and then right before the tax deadline, they impulsively dump money into whatever random tax-saving instrument their accountant or like a shiny advertisement puts in front of them. It leads to highly reactive, deeply suboptimal portfolio construction.
It's the equivalent of doing all your grocery shopping for the year in 5 minutes while you're starving.
That is a perfect analogy. And to counteract this, strategic planners recommend deploying a 12-month financial wellness calendar.
How does that work?
Instead of compressing the anxiety into a few weeks, you distribute the mental load. So January is purely dedicated to auditing the budget.
Okay.
April is just for stress testing the emergency fund. October is isolated for analyzing workplace benefits ahead of open enrollment. By assigning specific maintenance tasks to specific months, you replace emotional panic with structural discipline.
And you need that structural discipline because the stock market itself is designed to trigger your fight or flight response. When you look at the historical charts of the Dow Jones over a 25-year period, the market looks like an upward staircase. But the emotional experience of living through those 25 years feels like a roller coaster. Investors constantly swing from absolute euphoric greed during a bull market to panic-stricken terror the moment the market drops 10%.
This is why the golden rule of wealth management is time in the market, not timing the market.
Right.
The human brain is notoriously terrible at predicting peaks and valleys. When investors get scared and pull their money out to, wait for things to settle down, they almost always miss the steepest days of recovery.
Wow.
Historically, simply leaving your capital invested through the terrifying volatility yields significantly higher long-term returns than trying to actively jump in and out. The discipline is learning to completely separate your portfolio from your pulse rate.
So what does this all mean? Especially speaking of aligning your portfolio with your internal compass, though, there is a major shift happening in how people choose what to buy.
There is.
The data shows a massive surge in ESG investing, environmental, social, and governance. Investors want their capital to align with their morals, but let me play the ultimate skeptic here.
Okay.
If I deliberately restrict my investment options to only include socially responsible companies, aren't I artificially limiting my growth? Like, isn't ESG essentially a mandate to accept lower financial returns just to feel good about myself?
That is the most common critique, but the quantitative data actually dismantles that assumption.
Really? How?
Let's look at the actual mechanism of ESG. It isn't just a moral filter. It is a highly sophisticated risk management tool.
Okay, I'm listening.
Think about it mechanically. A company that actively reduces its carbon footprint and maintains rigorous environmental standards isn't just trying to save the polar bears. They are preemptively shielding their shareholders from catastrophic future carbon taxes or massive EPA fines.
Oh, that makes total sense.
Right. And a company with excellent labor practices is immune to supply chain shutdowns caused by worker strikes. By investing in highly rated ESG companies, you aren't sacrificing returns. You are actively buying into companies that are structurally superior at predicting and neutralizing long-term liabilities.
It's not charity, it's just better armor.
Exactly.
Okay, we have covered a tremendous amount of ground today. Let's quickly synthesize the blueprint for you.
Let's do it.
First, introduce friction to your spending and automate your savings to neutralize the expanding gas of lifestyle creep. Second, build a highly liquid cash moat so a sudden emergency doesn't force you into suffocating, mathematically disastrous debt.
Absolutely.
Third, transition to a fence and aggressively capture every single penny of that employer 401k match. Fourth, if your health profile allows it, unlock the triple tax advantage superpower of the HSA and let it compound. And finally, build a calendar system that protects your investments from your own emotional panic.
The ultimate goal is to construct a machine that operates logically so you don't have to rely on willpower.
And before we go, I want to leave you with one final concept to mull over. Let's combine that Japanese kakaibo ledger, the physical act of writing down what you value, with the mathematical reality of compound interest.
Oh, I like where this is going.
If we accept that compound interest will drastically multiply our financial capital over the next 3 decades, we have to realize that our psychological habits are compounding too.
That is so true.
The small, seemingly insignificant financial choices you make today aren't just funding a retirement account. They're actively financing the future version of yourself. Every time you consciously allocate your resources, you are casting a vote for your future identity.
A powerful way to look at it.
So, what kind of person are you compounding into? Keep exploring those ledgers, keep questioning your own habits, and thank you for joining us on this deep dive.